Hi, everybody. This is David Nevins for Citybiz List. And today we continue with another in our series of interviews sponsored by the Bridge Alliance, which we call Repairing America's Broken Democracy. And our special guest today is Sarah Bonk. Sarah is the founder and CEO of Business for America. I know I was going to say, Sarah, thank you for joining us, but you told me you like to go by Bonk. So Bonk it is. Thank you for joining us. And Bonk, tell us about what the Business for America is. You started it, what it does, what you hope to accomplish. And I guess maybe a little bit surprisingly, prior to founding this and taking on this responsibility, you had a very successful business career, I think 15 years or so at Apple. So it's a big switch. You must have been motivated by numerous things. So tell us a little bit about yourself and about that and about Business for America. Welcome again.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me. So Business for America is a business membership organization, and we are dedicated exclusively to mobilizing businesses to take action in support of a healthy democracy. And I'm sure we'll have time to get into that in a bit. From a personal level, I got my degree in public policy. I interned on Capitol Hill, had a great experience, but what I also learned was that I didn't belong there. Government moves too slowly, politics is ugly, and I'm just not the think tanky type. So instead of going into the political and government arena, I went into business instead, and I forged a career that in a way that was similar to public policy, which is very much around systems thinking, what you need to do in public policy to get better outcomes. My career really ended up centering around that. So I worked at the intersection of design and technology and communications, but with a focus on how the work gets done, how people communicate, how you build out teams, rather than the work itself. So it was interesting that there was this parallel for me between, what I studied and then what I ended up doing professionally. And at some point while I was at Apple, I decided I wanted to dedicate more time to making the world a better place. And I just kept coming back to these root level systems issues and the idea that if we didn't have better public policy and a better process for creating public policy, we're not going to get the outcomes that we need in this country. So I started pro bono consulting for a variety of nonpartisan groups working on this issue: money in politics, anti-corruption, election reform. And when I was doing that, I just kept hearing over and over again that businesses are the enemy, corporations are evil, they're the cause of the whole thing. And I can tell you that in all my years in the business world, I never heard anybody saying democracy is bad for us and we intend to destroy it. Not to say that business hasn't had a negative effect, but more that, these again are systemic issues. There isn't an intent there to harm democracy. And so I really felt that if we could show the world that the interest of the business community and the interest of the public are aligned in having a well-functioning democracy, that we'd be so much more likely to make progress on these issues. And that was really the impetus behind Business for America.
So good for you. So in that regard, tell us a little bit, Bonk, about how Business for America works and what it as an organization actually does.
Sure. Well, so we are a business membership organization. So we really are here to represent businesses and what their interests are in addressing this issue. We're pretty unique in the space in that we are focused exclusively on the issue of democracy. So, you talk to any other business group, they're going to have a position on taxes and infrastructure and workforce development, et cetera, a whole laundry list of things. We really are only looking at companies and mobilizing them as businesses and figuring out how to take action. And one of the things we like to say is that, it's wonderful, the progress that we've seen on a variety of social, environmental issues that businesses are getting involved in, but talking about it, making statements isn't enough. We need to take action. And so our focus really is on mobilization of business resources, influence, access in order to create change.
So in that regard, let me ask you, is it your experience, do businesses care about democracy? Should businesses care about democracy?
Well, we definitely feel that they should. And, I think that businesses are often lowercase c conservative in that if they don't need to get involved in an issue, many of them would prefer not to. Nobody wants to risk touching the lightning rod of the day. But there's a variety of reasons that businesses care about the issue of democracy. And, the business community is very diverse and, nowhere near monolithic. So they share a couple of different reasons. They really kind of boil down into, first of all, democracy is a moral issue. And for businesses that care about equality between, all different demographic, race and gender and LGBT rights, for the companies that are thinking about it as a social issue, as a rights issue, they care about democracy and that everybody has a voice in how our government functions. They're thinking about their stakeholders. That can be their employees, their customers, their communities, and framing it around, rights and access and having a voice. Now, at the same time, a lot of businesses are also thinking about this as a real business issue. It's a bottom line issue. If we don't have a well-functioning democracy, we're going to not have the conditions for a healthy business climate and a well-functioning economy. So nobody really wants to start a business in an area where they're uncertain, where there isn't that kind of stability and rule of law. So when you're talking to especially C-suite or corporate boards, yes, they care about, how stakeholders are affected, but they're really thinking about, is this a bottom line issue? Is there an economic argument? And more, we're finding that there are good cases to be made for the idea that democracy is the best system of government if you want to have a thriving economy.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I hope so. Have you found that it seems to me that there's more and more pressure on businesses to be more active in social and political issues today? I guess particularly and often led by the employees of those businesses. It's very hard to find employees today. So I would say most businesses are looking for ways to keep their employees happy. And it seems as if one of the things employees want is to work for a company that shares their values socially and politically. And I think we're all familiar with the whole Disney, Florida thing of the last several weeks. So how does your organization deal with that? And do you find that to be an accurate premise?
Absolutely. This isn't something that was the case when I went into the business world. But today's younger generations expect their companies to represent their values to an extent. Not that they have to agree with every single position or every single action of their company, but that in general, they feel their values are represented. And just like you alluded to, in a competitive economy where it's very competitive for talent, businesses see that as a necessity to have a stance on these issues and represent their employees' interests. I would add to that too, the other way that we see this pressure coming to the fore is that, activists are finding businesses to be a form of leverage in a world where they're often not getting progress, especially in, they can make progress in one state and not another state. We've got 50 states to deal with. And so when they're not getting the progress that they want to see, they're often looking to businesses to help create change, create that leverage that they themselves as the general public haven't figured out how to get the changes they want to see happen. So in terms of how we, conduct ourselves, we certainly find that businesses are hearing from their employees, we're concerned about A, B, and C, and we want you to do more. We want this company to do more. Even companies that you would think of as the leading companies in terms of taking a stance on social and political issues are hearing it's not enough. And so they're often coming to us and saying, like, what other opportunities are there for us to show that we care about this issue and that we're going to use the power that we have to help create change?
So, Bonk, in that regard, what particular initiatives are you working on with businesses right now, and do you have planned for the near-term future?
Sure. So, well, first of all, Just a very baseline, we ask every company to make sure their employees have time to vote. That is kind of table stakes if you care about democracy. Some states even require it by law. So, making that commitment isn't hard. And in some cases, companies are also encouraging their employees to think about becoming poll workers or finding other ways on election day to support having a well-functioning system of elections. But of course, giving your employees time to vote, we say, is not enough. Some of our initiatives are in the policy arena. We do work at the state and federal level. Right now, we have the Civic Security Democracy Act in the Congress. That is a bipartisan bill. We're pretty excited about it as kind of no-brainer approach to say, our democracy is valuable, and it's important that every citizen in public school gets a healthy foundation to their education on civics. Another one is the Electoral Count Act. That bill is just simply updating and clarifying the language of the original Electoral Count Act. And that is an area where there may be some loopholes and some confusion around the process of counting electoral votes in every presidential election. Well, we're saying, like, now that there's not a presidential election, then nobody really has a stake right today in that outcome, that we should fix it now when it is feeling a lot more nonpartisan. We can just look at the language and get that solved. So businesses are excited about that also as another opportunity for bipartisanship and getting something meaningful done to protect the guardrails around our democracy and our institutions. And finally, we are also engaging businesses to look at our social and political divides and say, what can we do in order to address that? Because we're seeing it, of course, in our society, and the politics are just seem like they're getting uglier and uglier. Things are happening in our community. There's a lot of negative energy and toxicity in our institutions. So what can businesses do about that, including in their workplace where these are showing up? And by helping our own employees to learn how to have more constructive conversations across differences, that we can therefore, that can kind of feed into our larger social norms and how we talk and work together and help improve and reverse this increasing polarization that we see in our society. So those are just three areas
Well,
that are currently involved.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. Let me ask you, if you don't mind, to just get a little more specific. What can businesses do about that? How can they encourage their employees to become more involved? How can they impact what seems to be the loss of education and educational opportunities around civics and the like? What are you encouraging them to do in order to make a difference here?
Sure. Well, in some cases, we're asking companies to use their political voice and their political influence to make a difference. We're not ashamed of saying we lobby legislative bodies to say, this matters to the business community, and we want you to vote this particular way on a specific bill. And then at the same time, we're also saying some of these companies wish to engage their employees. And so it is really a matter of creating community, engaging your employees and finding ways for them to have a voice and feel that they are making a difference. So in the case of something like getting out the vote, or pledging to work at the election or provide election support in some form, or getting involved in these groups that are helping to, this kind of a civic level, local and municipal level. There's a lot of groups working on bringing people who are different together, whether they're working on what do they call it? Participatory budgeting is one way, or joining a group that is focused on the constructive dialogue across differences. There's a wide variety of things that companies can use to engage their employees in creating a stronger democracy as well.
So, Bonk, let me ask you this in the maybe minute or two we have left. This program is distributed on Citybiz list, which goes to C-suite folks basically all over the country. Most of whom have an interest in civics and government and democracy and the like. So how can they engage with Business for America? What does the typical partnership look like?
Sure. So a couple things, we treat every company different. This is actually very high touch work because every company is in a different place in terms of their engagement, what they've already done and what their comfort level is with moving forward. So it all starts with a conversation. And we do ask those companies, as I mentioned, we have simple things to start with, dip your toes in and see that the water's fine, and then we can, take it up from there and find the right fit for each company. And I think the main thing that I would say here too is for each business leader to recognize that we're at a very unusual moment in time. For those of us who believe in democracy and believe that it is essential to having a well-functioning economy, that every business leader who has had success in this economy really owes it to our country and owes it to future generations to protect and promote representative democracy, and because it will continue to serve us going forward. So we ask them to have courage and step forward and find a way to have a voice and to use the access, the influence, the resources that they have at their fingertips to help make a difference. Anybody can find us at www.bfa.us. That's our URL, bfa.us. So it's pretty easy to find us.
Right. And I guess, are there costs involved, and are there businesses that are too large or too small for you to work with?
Never too large or too small. It's interesting. We do have some, as our members, we have like 5-person startups, and then we've got, multinational, tens of thousands of employees companies. So we have a membership level for everyone, but not everybody has to become a member to work with us. Not everybody has to give us money to work with us. We have activities that we will plug people into at no cost. Happy to do that.
Well, Sarah, this has been great. And I have no doubt you'll get some feedback from, as soon as this goes out, from the folks who will see it. And just state again one last time how our viewers can reach out to you.
Sure thing. We're at www.bfa.us. You'll find a contact us form there. Really, if you send an email to info@bfa.us, it'll find its way to me. We'll be happy to talk to anybody about what we offer.
Thank you so much. This has been a fascinating conversation. We
Thank you,
wish
David.
you much luck. Well,
Thank you,
so
David.
our guest today has been Sarah Bonk, even though she prefers to go by Bonk, but her name is Sarah Bonk, and she is the founder of Business for America. I hope several of you choose to reach out to her if interested, obviously. This has been David Nevins for Citybiz List, and this has been another of our conversations under the auspices of the Bridge Alliance, which we call Repairing America's Broken Democracy. Thank you for watching, and Sarah, thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you, David.